So good morning, good afternoon and good evening everybody, and welcome to this workshop on Land and Sea, Sustainable Bioeconomy and Interregional Ecosystems for Global Bioeconomy Summit 2020. Wherever you are in the world and in whatever time zone, I would like to welcome you and to thank you for joining us. My name is Ian O'Hara and I am on the International Advisory Committee for GBS and one of your co-chairs for today. For those that don't know me, I'm the Deputy Director of the Centre for Agriculture and the Bioeconomy at Queensland University of Technology and represent the Queensland Government as the Biofutures Industry Envoy. And I am joining you today from Brisbane in Australia. Also joining me as workshop co-chairs are Dr. Elspeth McRae, who is the Chief Innovation and Science Officer with SCION, the Crown Research Institute for the Forest and Wood Products Industry in New Zealand, and Dr. Morikot Tentakaroen, who is an advisor to the President of the National Science and Technology Development Agency in Thailand. Joining us on the workshop today, we have co-chairs, speakers and panelists from 5 continents and 11 countries, and we will be looking across the globe at how sustainable bioeconomy is changing regions. We will work our way from the forests to the oceans and covering topics relating to sustainable land use, bioresource protection, regional employment and economic transition. Also joining us today are the participants in the workshop, and we welcome you from wherever you are and thank you for showing interest in the summit, in this workshop, and in creating sustainable bioeconomy. So here in Australia and where I'm from, we like to start our events by acknowledging the First Nations owners of the lands on which we meet, which for me in Brisbane is the Turrbal and Yuggera peoples. In doing so, I pay my respects to their elders, laws, customs and creation spirits, and acknowledge that for thousands of years, these lands have been places of learning, teaching and research. I would also like to acknowledge the diverse range of cultures and experiences of all of our workshop participants, and note that many of you also have your own customs, practices or welcomes. Please feel free to share these in the chat, which is just to the left of the main screen in the big blue button platform. So please type in your welcomes or your acknowledgements in the chat function. Now, a couple of important things. Firstly, the workshop is being recorded. Secondly, because of the large number of participants, bandwidth issues prevent us from allowing participants to have cameras or microphones on. However, we do want you to contribute. Now, there are 3 ways in which you can do this. Firstly, you can use the chat function in the webinar program. It is just to the left of the main screen at the bottom. Put in here your questions or your thoughts. We will capture your comments and analyse them to include in the outputs of the workshop. So how about starting now? Pop a quick message in the chat. Secondly, we have some polls running in Slido. Open up another tab on your browser and answer the questions in Slido. And let me just quickly show you the information here. So you'll see there the link to Slido and the code. Please enter the code and select the Land and Sea workshop. But thirdly, we have set up a whiteboard page in Mural. Again, open up another tab, go to the Mural link, which is at the top of the chat posts, and post any thoughts or ideas on the Mural board. So this is your chance to contribute to the future of the global bioeconomy. Please make your voice heard. So try these tools now. The Slido poll and the Mural whiteboard are open. The links are available on the screen at the top of the chat. And please answer the first question. What would you like to get out of today's workshop? Now, the world we live in has many challenges. We need to produce more food for a growing population. We need more energy to support global development. And at the same time, we need to dramatically reduce carbon emissions to mitigate the worst impacts of climate change. And we live in a world where our resources are depleting. And this is especially true of our natural ecosystems and our biodiversity, which are essential not just for economic and social well-being, but critical to the planetary systems that support life. But the new sustainable bioeconomy offers us a framework in which we can both utilise and protect our natural ecosystems. The bioeconomy creates jobs in diverse areas from forest products to renewable materials to aquaculture and tourism. But we must balance our need to exploit these resources with the necessity to protect and get the ecosystem services and environmental services that a healthy environment provides. And this is underpinned by knowledge, science, innovation, and education. And the bioeconomy is essential to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, whether it be reducing hunger, creating sustainable communities, protecting our marine environment, or creating affordable and clean energy. And many countries are recognising the opportunities in the bioeconomy, and we see supportive policy being developed around the world. So in our workshop today, we will be discussing sustainable bioeconomy and interregional ecosystems from many perspectives. What are the major challenges to growing the sustainable bioeconomy while protecting natural ecological systems on land and sea? How do we enhance industry transition to sustainable bioeconomy? How do we balance consumption and utilisation of natural resources? What are the economic and ecological opportunities and threats caused by the COVID-19 pandemic? What are the roles of technologies and public awareness in sustainable utilisation and conservation? And what are the impediments to and how do we enhance interregional and country collaboration in sustainable bioeconomy? Our agenda will cover a variety of topic areas, and we will have co-chairs in charge of each topic. Each topic will be a mix of speakers and panel sessions. The first topic will be forest bioeconomy, regional cooperation, policy and business, and will be led by Anthony Imbrogno, who is a senior economist with the Canadian Forest Service, and Teresa Rossi, who is a project coordinator from Instituto Escalhas in Brazil. And we thank them for staying up very late to join us for this workshop. The second topic will be facilitating the industrial transition to bioeconomy, regional bioeconomy hubs, which will be led by Gary Schenk, a professor at University of Queensland, and Volker Sieber, who is rector of the Technical University of Munich, Campus Straubing, for biotechnology and sustainability. The third topic will be ocean bioeconomy, scaling up regional blue bioeconomy. This topic will be led by Ivana Lukic, who is a marine policy and planning consultant based in Berlin, and Ukrit Satapumaned, who is Director of Marine Resources Conservation Division, Department of Marine and Coastal Resources within the Thailand Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. Following the third topic, we will have a short consolidation and inspiration session where we seek to pull all of the discussion together to reach some conclusions. So just to bring my co-chairs into the conversation, I'm going to see if we have Elspeth McRae online. Elspeth, are you with us yet? Maybe not. So Moricott, are you with us?
Good.
You there, Moricott? Hello?
Hello. Yes. Good afternoon from Bangkok. My name is Moricott. I will be co-chair with Ian and Elspeth. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Moricott, what are you hoping to get out of the workshop today?
Oh yeah, I think it's thank you for the participant to join the workshop. But I really want to get out from here is that hopefully the participant have fun and happy with the workshop, and after that we can have a networking.
Right, thanks, Moricott. So I'm just going to, I see a number of people trying to get into the mural, and I'm just going to update the link to make sure that everybody's got that link. Please check the chat in a minute. Hopefully you can then access it. And what I might do now is to hand over to our first topic. And for this, I would like to hand over to Anthony Imbrogno and Teresa Rossi. Anthony and Teresa, I'm going to stop now and hand over to you.
Thank you, Ian. Good morning. Teresa, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Oh, great. All right. Okay. So thank you very much, Ian. And everyone, welcome to the session today, looking at the forest bioeconomy. So as Ian mentioned, I'm a senior economist with the Economic Analysis Division at the Canadian Forest Service, part of Natural Resources Canada. And if I may give an example, perhaps, in Canada, our forest bioeconomy spans the boreal forest and other forested ecosystems, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that that also includes the Great Plains, which is actually where my hometown is located. So given that the bioeconomy can span different ecosystems, that's basically the question we'd like to explore for this session today. What is the role of interregional cooperation in the development of a sustainable forest bioeconomy? So we're going to look to you, the audience, to perhaps provide some of those answers to us up front. I believe that the Slido might have that question available to answer. If not, then there is the chat that's available to use to share your thoughts as we go through today's session. So I don't see it in the Slido, but oh, no, I see it now. Okay, great, thank you. So the Slido is ready. And Teresa, maybe I'll hand it over to you next.
Well, while the audience provides their answers to the question, I will introduce myself. My name is Teresa Rossi, Project Coordinator at Instituto Escolhas, a Brazilian think tank focused on the intersections between economic and environmental issues. In Brazil, one of our main focuses in terms of bioeconomy is reflecting on the Amazon region and its huge potential. First up today, we have a presentation from Seaweed Shepherd, Policy Analyst at the Canadian Forest Service, Natural Resources Canada, who will discuss the work of the Forest Bioeconomy Working Group of the International Bioeconomy Forum. Severin, please. If you're there, we would like to listen to your presentation.
Hello, hopefully everyone can see me. So conference organizers, are we able to get the presentation up? And while we wait for the slides, I'll just introduce myself. As Teresa mentioned, I'm a policy analyst with the Canadian Forest Service and Natural Resources Canada, and I'm also currently part of the Secretariat for the International Bioeconomy Forum's Forest Bioeconomy Working Group. And today I'm just going to be giving a quick presentation about some of our work that we've done in terms of interregional cooperation through this working group. And my first slide here. This working group is co-chaired by both the Canadian Forest Service and by Scion Forest Research Institute in New Zealand. And we have member countries, Argentina, South Africa, India, Australia, and the EU. We also have 3 observing organizations, the European Forest Institute, FP Innovations in Canada, and the Joint Research Centre at the European Commission. The representation of different regions within this working group allows a variety of perspectives and a more holistic approach to developing an international forest bioeconomy. So we're really lucky to have this representation. The motivation for creating the working group was really the recognition that there are a lot of emerging opportunities for our member countries with regards to the forest bioeconomy. For the forest sector in most countries, as many of us are aware, the forest or the bioeconomy is a way for companies to diversify markets and products, to use fiber more efficiently, and to move up the value chain to generate more value added from their products. The forest bioeconomy also provides our member countries with new opportunities for replacing fossil fuels with fossil fuel-based products, mitigating greenhouse gas emissions by providing renewable, low-carbon solutions, and for rural economic development while encouraging new entrants into the value chain. The main objective of our working group is really to facilitate the market development for emerging forest-based bioproducts with consideration for the asymmetries that might exist among countries. The working group has developed the following vision. It aims to be a credible and globally recognized resource group that facilitates collaboration and coordinated actions among members to support the contribution of the forest sector to the bioeconomy, to facilitate outreach and communication, and to inform policy. To guide the work of this group, we developed a roadmap in late 2018, which covers the period from 2019 until 2022, and it was developed in consultation with all working group members and in alignment with the goals of the International Bioeconomy Forum. Within the roadmap, we have 3 focus areas that address the greatest needs in supporting bioeconomy growth that were identified by our members as well as experts. And under each focus area, there are a number of projects that we aim to implement in the near to medium term future to realize our vision. And I'm going to present these focus areas and projects in a bit more detail over the next few slides. So first up is the communication strategies focus area, which is led by Canada. And this looks at ensuring that the concept of forest bioeconomy is accepted as beneficial by government and by the general public by improving communication and outreach about the forest bioeconomy. There are 2 main projects under this area. The first involves a literature review to identify the sustainable development goals that are most strongly associated with forest bioeconomy, which takes the form, which will then take the form of an article that highlights forest bioeconomy contributions to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals with examples from our member countries. And our hope there is to have this article published in open access journal sometime in the near future so that it will be publicly available. The second project highlights opportunities and gaps that might exist in communications practices and strategies related to the forest bioeconomy. And it will include an infographic that summarizes trends related to the public perception of bioeconomy globally, as well as a survey of government, industry, and public stakeholders that we are in the midst of completing at the moment. And eventually it will include development of a communication strategy and relevant deliverables like a guidebook and an interactive map of communication successes. So really looking forward to that, hopefully by the end of next year. The final project under this focus area is really just to work with the other focus areas to communicate the outcomes of their deliverables leading up to that 2022 deadline. The next focus area is data and monitoring, and it is led by the Joint Research Centre at the European Commission. They aim to create a network for data exchange, to build inventories of data, and to define a common set of indicators to measure and monitor the forest bioeconomy. And they also report on the current status of forest bioeconomy in member countries. There are 4 main projects under this focus area, and the first is to develop a set of key definitions for the forest bioeconomy that are common across all member countries. The second is to develop an inventory of the available forest bioeconomy related data in these countries, and they are also developing a set of indicators that will be harmonized with the guidance document that is currently being developed by the JRC and FAO, as well as with the bioeconomy monitoring frameworks that exist or are under development in member countries. And they are planning to begin work soon on a method to calculate forest land embedded in commodities and products. So lots on the go for this focus area. And finally, our last focus area is led by New Zealand and Argentina, and it focuses on identifying and addressing bottlenecks and risks. The main project under this focus area is to compile case studies with lessons learned by member countries, addressing how to overcome identified bottlenecks and risks to bioeconomy development and deployment. The focus area leads have developed so far a standardized template and indicators for these case studies, and we have developed case studies in New Zealand, Canada, and Argentina. The next steps in the focus area will be to organize a workshop to consolidate the case studies and to refine the list of bottlenecks, risks, and opportunities, and to lay the groundwork for the mapping exercise. And the final deliverable for this focus area will likely be a map of bottlenecks and risks to bioeconomy development, both region-specific and general, to identify the key bottlenecks and risks and help countries and organizations put in place effective measures to mitigate them. So on our panel today, we're really glad to have representatives from each of these focus areas. We have Sarah Mubaraka, who leads data and monitoring, and Natalia Raffaelli and Belen Pedane, who co-lead the bottlenecks, opportunities, and risks focus area with one of the organizers of this workshop, Elspeth McRae, and myself and Anthony co-lead the communications focus area. So any questions about that, feel free to direct towards myself. We look forward to an engaging discussion. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Severin. So Severin has introduced our panel members. And so I think perhaps I'll hand it off to Teresa to ask the first question.
Exactly. We'll have some questions to our panel members, and then we will open up to audience questions. The first question goes to Sarah first, but all panelists are welcome to answer. What is the role of scientific collaboration in the context of regional cooperation on bioeconomy? What is the role of data?
Hi, good morning from Italy. Thank you very much for this really interesting question and for having me here today. Global collaboration is critical to the success of global bioeconomy. I think we all know that. And when I say success, I'm referring to, by default, the protection and enhancement of natural systems that actually produce the feedstock for all bioeconomy, which is biomass, right? So I'm going to focus on that in the answer. First, we have to ensure sustainable production of biomass, and then we can talk about the rest. We can talk about societal and economic benefits. But the biosphere is the foundation of the bioeconomy. We can all agree to that, I think. So Ian showed 4 main global challenges in one of his first slides: food, energy, climate change, and depletion of natural resources. And we see now, I'm working from home because there is a global pandemic, there is a rise in zoonotic disease, and it's clear that this rise is due to encroachments on pristine ecosystems. I think this is there's a consensus in the scientific community about this. So now to the question. Global collaborative efforts, which is the 17th Sustainable Development Goal, is a critical enabler to a successfully bioeconomy at global scale. From Europe, so this is a region of high consumption. And an absolute key issue is that we rely a lot on imported biomass from different production systems, not only from forest, but agroecological, marine, freshwater, aquaculture. So our imports are associated to environmental impacts, but it's surprising how little is known about how big the footprint is. And we cannot assess that on our own. This is where the global collaboration is so fundamental. So my first point is we need to collaborate across regions to already begin to identify critical geographical areas, commodities, and products. And the Commission has initiated an observatory for deforestation and forest degradation to observe changes in forest cover inside and outside of Europe using Earth observation tools. But we know that's not enough, so we have the experience that we have to collaborate with national experts to even just scrape the surface to understand the social, economic, and other environmental impacts, not just the ones we can see from space, but impacts on soil, for example, air quality and other things. The only way we can do that is by collaboration, is through collaboration. And this is a scientific collaboration. We really have to understand what the implications of our imports, in speaking from the European perspective, are. My second point is that we, as a global community, all must monitor our bioeconomies in a way that ensures monitoring of all dimensions of sustainability, not just the economic dimension. The FAO is going to present a joint guidance note, on monitoring sustainable and circular bioeconomy. And we feel very strongly that it's important that all regions of the world focus also on the environmental and social sustainability of bioeconomy, because this is to address the global challenges that Anne pointed out today. We're all responsible.
Thank you, Sarah. Our next question is directed then to Natalia and Belen. What are the roles of networks and regional cooperation in growing a sustainable forest bioeconomy while protecting ecological systems? If they also want to comment on some of the main bottlenecks that they found during their study, they're welcome to do so. Do we have Natalia and Belen?
I see that I cannot enter to the mic. Maybe perhaps, are both Natalia and Belen having problems? Well, perhaps in the meantime, if our audience members have any questions that they'd like to submit into the chat, to welcome you to enter those in. Maybe I could bring Severin back for a second here while we figure out the other problems. Severin, could you tell us a little bit about the bioeconomy perception survey that was recently done in Canada? Oh, maybe she's not there.
No, I'm just slow to turn my mic back on.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was really great that one of Ian's points in the opening was the importance of communication. I think that's really something that we're trying to do with this survey, is to think about how we can best communicate the forest bioeconomy across different regions, across different stakeholder groups, and try to come up with language and a message, a way of messaging that really speaks to different stakeholders equally and really gets to their priorities. And so something we were finding in the lead up to the survey as well as in the results is really that the dimensions of sustainability, so if we're thinking about social, economic, ecological dimensions of sustainability, they're all important to all stakeholders, it seems, but there is sort of a difference in terms of how they're balanced. So maybe one group feels very strongly that ecological sustainability is the main concern when it comes to forest bioeconomy, whereas another might feel that economic sustainability is a little bit more important. And so I think trying to kind of reconcile those differences and find a balance is one of the main goals of the survey. And we're really hoping that it's something that we can replicate in our other member countries, because right now it really is just something that's happening in the Canadian context, and we'd really like to see that extrapolated. But I know there's also quite a lot being done in Europe as well, so it's good to see that so far our results are really matching up with what we see there. And for anyone who's interested in their work, I know the European Forest Institute has just released a report that kind of it's a meta-analysis of a lot of their surveys. So I would encourage participants to check that out if they're more interested in the communications angle, and hopefully we'll be able to share some of our results back with the public pretty soon.
Great, thank you, Severin. I still don't see Belen or Natalia. So, Teresa, did you have any questions? Or I could turn to the audience input to our question from the beginning.
If we have the answers, I believe that would be nice to stimulate some discussion.
Yeah, so we have
any questions right from the audience.
So we did have some responses to our opening question. I'll repeat it in the Slido. How can interregional cooperation facilitate the development of a sustainable forest bioeconomy? And I see community involvement, stakeholder engagement, protection of cross-regional keystone species. I'd be interested to know what a keystone species is. And that's just speaking to my training as a political scientist, not a biologist. Information sharing, that was me, I typed that one. Since I think not being a forester, I'm certainly interested in learning more as we continue to develop the bioeconomy here in Canada. Agreements, I'd be curious to know perhaps in the chat what agreements. I also see preservation, policy coherence, certainly that's something to take into consideration in Canada with several different jurisdictions. And I also see the word quota. Be interested to know what it means more specifically. Well, considering can we please unlock the mics? Oh, I have a question from Jordan. Is it actually possible to create a generalized pathway towards forest bioeconomy in very different countries and contexts? Sarah, are you still online? Could I direct that question to you, perhaps, for the European answer? And I may have a quick Canadian answer. And Teresa, if you wanted to answer.
So while Sarah comes back, I believe there's a lot of multilateral common goals that we can work on. I believe that regional cooperation is very important because of these specificities. So I believe that we have to have very consolidated regional agendas and then work on interregional cooperation and multilateral cooperation to have the instruments and mechanisms and especially financial flows directed to establishing these regional agendas. But I do believe that the particularities are so strong that we have to work on regional cooperation and try to sort those regional priorities before going to multilateral instances.
That's an interesting point. Thank you. And I think in the Canadian example, we also have that process where provinces in Canada went about developing their own bioeconomy strategies. And then in 2017, we had the Canadian Council of Forest Ministers endorse the Forest Bioeconomy Framework for Canada. So to Jordan's question, I would say the answer is yes. But it is, in Canada, it is a generalized bioeconomy framework that then can be implemented in each of the different provinces and regions as they see fit for their circumstances. So it has that sort of flexibility to it that you might expect from a federal system. And actually, for more on the bioeconomy strategy, maybe I can plug on Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time in North America, my boss's boss will be presenting on a little bit about how the Canadian bioeconomy framework was developed and lessons learned from that. So a little plug for a session. Okay, we can maybe take this next question from, Belen has audio now. Belen, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Well,
it's so early here in Argentina, so sorry.
No problem. I believe the question go ahead, Teresa. Yeah.
Exactly. The question was, what are the roles of networks and regional cooperation in growing a sustainable forest bioeconomy while protecting ecological ecosystems? But Belen, if you want to comment also on some of the regulatory bottlenecks of your study, please feel free.
Yes, I can talk about Argentina mainly. Here is important the political changes, and I think that, of course, the networks are important, and not also the education or scientific networks, also including the companies. And here we work in a regional bioeconomy perspective. I'm living in Patagonia, and we have a different reality here on forest bioeconomy than in the northern part of Argentina, for example, that is similar to Brazil, for example. And the goals are different, and the products, the bioproducts, are different. So the importance here is to find regions that work together and share different different works. For example, here we have similar work and similar structure in our forest than Chile. So for us, it's easier to work with Chile than with the northern part of Argentina. And I think that we must find that similarities, and we have good examples of forest bioeconomy.
Thank you, Belen. If I can just comment rapidly in terms of regional bioeconomy, Brazil's main challenge is obviously the Amazon, but we have a lot of different biomes to worry about. But in terms of the Amazon, it's a forest that spans over 9 different countries, so we actually have to work on international cooperation to get this agenda ready. And in terms of regulatory bottlenecks, which there are several, I would point out that the regulation on access and benefit sharing is very important, and it's very important that we work on these regulations so that we can access genetic resources and share the benefits with the indigenous and traditional populations, and that we try to look for a convergence on regulation so that we actually have a policy space, a homogeneous policy space in the Amazon, so we can facilitate international investment and multilateral cooperation. But thank you, Belen, for the cases in Argentina. Same continent, very, very different realities and very different biomes. Anthony, yes. Do we have any more words up on the cloud or questions from the audience?
I see Johanna answered my question about a keystone species, one that has a disproportionately large impact on the ecosystem, and if it disappears, the community structure can collapse, so appreciate that. I'm just looking at the time. Maybe we can take one more question, unless I'm told not to do that, but I see Peter put in, how do you plan to bring the information you're gathering to foresters and other people involved? Anybody want to take that question from our panel?
I can, my video is not working all of a sudden, but I can take a stab at answering that question on behalf of the communications focus area. That's part of why we're thinking about already how we're going to develop our communications products and materials to really communicate the results of our survey, and thinking about how to frame some of that key messaging around the forest bioeconomy. And so likely what that's going to look like is different communications products for different groups. Maybe one way of communicating to foresters versus a different way of communicating to government. And we'll hope to do the same for the other focus areas in the Forest Bioeconomy Working Group as well.
And I know that in Canada too, those discussions with the stakeholders are ongoing. So I think that this communication work being done can help inform those conversations, but sometimes we learn by doing, and I think that that's a little bit about how that information can flow back and forth. Teresa, did you have final thought before perhaps we wrap it up?
Just in terms of communications and messaging, it's also very important to involve the private sector, which is something that we don't have the time to explore fully. But it's definitely important to have a public policy agenda and a private policy agenda to involve the private sector in the development of new technologies and new ways to generate profit from biodiversity and to share that profit perfectly.
Yes, and somebody else wrote into the Slido knowledge about impacts of trade, which I think speaks to that, that idea of the involvement of the private sector and their businesses.
Speaks to Sarah's point as well, very, very strongly, right? So
yes.
That is important, traceability of commodities.
Yes. Okay. Well, I think perhaps maybe I'll thank my co-facilitator, Teresa, for being here today with me, as well as to our panel members. Thank you so much for joining us today and providing your expertise and ideas. Perhaps to quickly summarize, I think when coming at interregional cooperation, we've heard about some of the science-informed development, information sharing, and I think perhaps communication is something that I'm constantly learning about when looking at fostering policy alignment, developing policies, and in the end, trying to move forward a global and sustainable forest bioeconomy. So thank you all very much. Thank you to the audience for your questions, for the Slido, and I believe now I'm passing the floor back to Elspeth or Ian for the next agenda topic.
Thanks, Anthony and Teresa. That was really fabulous, and thanks for persevering with all of the little challenges, the technical challenges we have. This is the first time most of us are using this platform, so thank you to our participants for being patient. And Anthony and Teresa and some of your panel, I know it's very early in the morning over there in your part of the world. So again, thanks for being with us, and hopefully you can stay with us for a little bit longer. Look, I picked up some really useful information from that session around the importance of obviously communication, the challenges of interregional frameworks, and particularly the challenges of managing ecosystems across the country boundaries. And we obviously see the challenges, but we see the opportunities that forest bioeconomy will create in many parts of the world. So thank you very much to the panel, and thank you to the speakers and the other panelists also. We're now going to move rapidly on to the second topic area. And the second topic area is around industrial transition, and it's around looking at the transition to regional bioeconomy hubs. And for this, I'd like to introduce your two co-chairs, Dr. Gary Shank, Professor Gary Shank, and Professor Volker Sieber. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Ian and everyone. It's a particular pleasure and honor for me to chair this session. And before I probably go on, I should just check. I mean, you can all hear me? Ian, maybe? Can you sort of hear me?
Perfect,
so,
perfect.
Excellent, thank you very much. So just before I get too far off the track, so it's a particular pleasure and honor for me to chair this session, facilitating the industrial transition to bioeconomy, with a particular focus on regional bioeconomy hubs. As Ian said, my name is Gary Shank, and I'm a professor of entomology and biochemistry at the University of Queensland, also in Brisbane here in Australia. In this workshop here, we will highlight the significance of regional bioeconomy hubs. Specifically, we will discuss the challenges that have to be addressed and solved to establish a regional bioeconomy, and also how regional hubs may facilitate the industrial transition to the bioeconomy. Bioeconomy is a global endeavor, and different regions of the planet are confronted with different challenges, expectations, and needs. Hence, we assembled a panel here of international experts that will showcase different global regions and their potential in bioeconomy. Each of our 4 panelists will be given a few minutes to introduce their area and its potential for the bioeconomy. We will commence with my co-chair, Professor Volker Sieber from the Technical University of Munich, where he is Director of Campus Straubing for Biotechnology and Sustainability. He's also spokesperson of the Bavarian Bioeconomy Council and thus well placed to comment on the importance of globally connected bioeconomy initiatives. Next, we will hear from Ms. Anne Catherine Kaufmann from the Biocampus Straubing, which is a subsidiary of the Port of Straubing. And Catherine is an expert in the area of energy and resource efficiency, and she will outline here infrastructure developments that have been implemented in her rural area of Bavaria to enhance its attractiveness for a bio-based industry. Also on the panel is Ms. Carly Porter. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the Greater Whitsunday Alliance. Now, the Whitsunday region is a beautiful part in central to northern Queensland on the east coast of Australia. In her leading role for the Alliance, Carly plays a crucial part in establishing the framework for the establishment of industry sectors, including a bio-based one, in her region. And last but definitely not least, we are also very fortunate to have Dr. Marisa Corral on our panel. Marisa is a biochemist and also a process engineer, and she is the process and quality manager at the Raizen second generation cellulosic ethanol plant in Piracicaba, that's near Sao Paulo in Brazil. She will highlight some of the challenges she had to tackle in establishing a new technology, and will also highlight the added value product range that can be linked to this sugarcane industry. So I think I said enough, and without further ado, I now hand over to Volker Sieber to initiate our panel presentations, and then brief discussion will conclude our session. Volker, if you please.
Yes, thank you, Gary, and welcome everybody for this workshop. So we are all aware that the transfer towards a strong bioeconomy is a global task, but yet regional circumstances and ecosystems determine its success. So this is why it's important to look at different regions and to learn from each other to avoid the pitfalls along the way and build upon the experience that has been made. And so a few years ago, we have formed the Global Bioeconomy Alliance between institutions from Australia, Brazil, and Germany as a priming. And we formed it just for this reason, to learn from each other and advance the bioeconomy by joining our forces. And now within this workshop, as Gary already said, we will look just into these 3 regions, and we will look at some success stories, but also the challenges. And we'll hopefully learn how the hubs have to be designed to advance bioeconomy. So in Europe, the technological development and research funding to advance the bioeconomy is on a high level, as is the infrastructure, as well as the demand for sustainable bioproducts and bioenergy. But the question is, do we see the triumphal march of bioeconomy? Well, where there are hubs, the triumph is best, so the advancements are highest. So hubs are very important, at least in Europe. Now looking at the other regions, how important are they there, and what challenges are there? So Australia, and here especially Queensland, has a huge amount of biomass available. And so far, the country had a strong focus on fossil resources, which now suffer by the decline of the acceptance as well as the price. And so there are many challenges to industrial segments. Brazil, from all these, has the strongest background and success stories in bioeconomy, with a long story on sugar ethanol, now also the 2G ethanol. But even though there are apparently some hubs and it was possible to advance it, there are many challenges still remaining, and challenges are really manifold. May they be in the lack of private industry engagement, the absence of political support, deficiency in feedstock supply, or technological hurdles. We have listed a few of such points in Slido and asked for your opinion. What you consider, you as the audience, consider as the main challenges that you see, that you have to face. And if you believe that there are some grand challenges missing in our list, please add them to the mural and give your opinion and see what in your region of the world is the biggest challenge to advance bioeconomy or to build a bioeconomy hub. With that, I would like to hand over now to our speakers. So let's hear about the regional hubs, and yeah, next would be Anne-Catherine.
Thank you very much, Volker. And I think Anne-Catherine, without further ado and introduction, I pass on to you.
I mean, in the meantime, I can tell you that Straubing, where I am sitting at the moment, is in the southeastern part of Bavaria, Germany. So we are really early in the morning, but nevertheless, irrespective of the time of day, we are trying to put the bioeconomy here forward. And in Straubing, we have put a focus on the bioeconomy, on the industrial transition towards it for a long time. And Straubing is a historically strong agricultural and forestry shaped and based region. And we are located at the River Danube. So we have a number of options that give us a good opportunity for the bio-based economy. So, okay, basically, it's not the presentation mode right now, but I hope you can see it. That's what I said. We are located at the River Danube. We are a port, a small local port. We are publicly held, obviously, and as you can see here, we do have different types of business units, but our focus really is on the bio-based economy. And as I already said, the region that we are located in gives us a certain edge towards bioeconomy that we want to use, and the focus is on creating a space where bioeconomy can grow from ideas to innovation and marketable products and processes. And for this, we have a number of, I think, very favorable conditions here. As you can see, we have a lot of space available, and our really big asset is also that we have a very close proximity to scientific excellence with our TUM campus, the Technical University of Munich, that has its campus here in Straubing. So as I told you, we are a port, so multimodal and sustainable transport is important for us, and for 10 years we've been waiting for a train, as you can see here, for bioeconomy, not very passively, but we have been waiting for traction to pick up. And now we decided it's time to stop the waiting and get really proactive. I think traction is really picking up in the bio-based economy all over the continent and all over the globe as well, not just in Europe, but all over the world, and we are well equipped already, but we are now we have started to harness the favorable conditions that we have and put it into action by further strengthening our infrastructure and the ecosystem for bio-based economy that we have here. For all we know, knowledge and science are key for innovation, and we are lucky in Straubing as we have world-class research and education here. And our big engine, it doesn't look very powerful here on the slide, but it is very, very powerful, is that TUM campus that is doing a lot of research in the industrial biotechnology and also the sustainability parts of bioeconomy. We have a number of other actors that you can see here that are active in the marketing, the research, the applied research, especially both in the energetic and the material use of bio-based materials. You can check that out in a second. And then that is where the port comes into play. As you saw, we have port infrastructure, so inland port infrastructure. We have space available, which is obviously very important. We have feedstocks that can be sustainably sourced or needs to be sustainably sourced, and we have excellent research. So we need a site, obviously, that can transform these ideas into reality, and we are doing this with big commitment also by the Free State of Bavaria at the Bio Campus in the port. And you see here our vision. You can see that these gray elements are already here. I'm going to go into it in a little bit more detail. That's what you can see when you come in the port of Straubing right now. That's our business incubation center here and the Clariant Sunliquid plant that some of you or a lot of you might know, where they are transforming lignocellulosic raw materials, second generation feedstock, into ethanol, and it's our key account when it comes to bioeconomy here in Straubing. And here you can see our physical biocampus, and this is what we are envisioning at the moment. Here, between the incubation center and the Clariant, this is where our biocampus multi-pilot is going to be built. And this is something that is, the missing link in our ecosystem that we are now going to realize. What we also want to do is to get the Fraunhofer that is now located in Straubing to grow. This is a big endeavor that Volker Sieber is pushing, and we want them to be part of this biocampus here in the port and be settled here. And also we need to expand our incubation center, which is currently full. So we have a lot of startup and companies and also bigger companies in this building that needs more space. And then we will have further assets like a parking space and a hotel, and also obviously more plants of the type that the Clariant has, so that we have industrial action going on. So this is our vision for our bioeconomy hub here in Straubing. Just a few more words on our multi-pilot. I think that is something of interest. It is going to be a multi-purpose open access demonstration plant with scale-up facilities for the industrial biotechnology. Some of these plants are already active in Europe and also in other parts of the world. It has substantial funding of 40 million, and we will operate it as a neutral operator according to industry standards, obviously. So just to sum up, we want to finalize or realize this ecosystem from ideas over research development onto demonstration and the market. And we feel that we are on the right track for that. And to put it in a nutshell, in my opinion, it's really important to utilize regional side advantages that we already have in place, harness the political support that might be lurking somewhere and use it to your advantage, use it for funding for novel infrastructure, work towards a functional regional network, and then expand it across the borders, which is something that we are doing right now. So I'm really sorry for this problem right now in the beginning, but that is what I wanted to tell you from my side, and I'll be back on the panel in a couple of seconds. Thank you very much.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much, Anne Catherine. Don't worry about technology problems. I think that's what we all face with. I mean, you may very well end up as the file share for us, but you provide an excellent segue also to our next sort of speaker, Carly from Mackay, the Greater Whitsunday Alliance, as I mentioned, because I can envision that there's probably a lot of synergy sort of already sort of evolving between Straubing and Queensland. So Carly, if you please, if you can share. All right.
Beautiful.
I'll leave it to you. Thank you.
Excellent. Good morning or good evening or hello, wherever you are. My name's Kylie Porter. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of an organisation called Greater Whitsunday Alliance, or GW3. And we're an independent economic development organisation for the Greater Whitsunday region. And our role is to support economic growth through connecting opportunities and preparing for the future. So I'd like to commence my little chat today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land from which I'm presenting today, the Yuwi people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and then recognise and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of Queensland, Australia. So for those of you across the globe today, let me introduce you to my beautiful region. So as it was mentioned, we are based in Queensland, Australia. We cover an area of some 90,000 square kilometres, which if we were located in Europe would make us Europe's 20th biggest country. So that gives you an idea of the scale of the region which I represent. Our region spans lush agricultural land, minerals and coal basins, and spectacular coastline bordering the Great Barrier Reef. So these next few images will give you a little insight into the region that I'm proud to call home and representing today. So this next slide coming up hopefully is Mackay, which is my home city. The next one is a region called the beautiful Isaac region. This produces most of Australia's metallurgical, or has most of Australia's metallurgical coal deposits, but also some very, very strong agricultural credentials as well. And then finally, the beautiful Whitsundays. And yes, there's 74 glorious islands in the Whitsunday region, and it's part of Australia's Great Barrier Reef. So even though our region is very big in size, our population is quite small. So only home to just over 173,000 people, with around a permanent workforce of around 85,000. Our total economic output for this region is close to $42 billion. So even though we're large in size, we have a small population, we're actually incredibly, we perform well above, you know, the Australian standard in terms of economic output. Mining is our largest output generating sector, supporting an estimated, output of around $19 billion. So our challenge as a region is to make sure we have really positive conversations about where we're going. So traditionally, our regional economy has had its roots firmly in agriculture, although over the last 2 decades, we've progressively become more focused on mining and the highly technical mining services and equipment sector. We refer to that as the MET sector. But the world, technology, and most importantly, the environment is changing. And it's increasingly obvious to us that we are in a prime location to not just actively, but aggressively pursue a biofutures industry in the Mackay, Isaac and Whitsunday region. I can hear you all thinking, why would a region that is renowned for producing metallurgical coal or being home to 74 islands of the beautiful Great Barrier Reef want to pursue biofutures? Well, the next couple of slides kind of explains it all. So the Greater Whitsunday region is home to some of Australia's most, or the world's most energy dense and productive feedstocks or biomass sources. Our region's long history of sugarcane production and cattle farming is setting us up for a future success in the bioeconomy space. This feedstock table, which I'll just move to the next slide, doesn't even take into consideration that in the next 5 years, this region will also become home to one of Australia's largest aquaculture precincts, further enhancing our biomass credentials. Now, I imagine that there is a long list of countries and regions across the globe which can also lay claim to having strong biomass potential for biofutures. I can already think of multiple regions in my own country. Probably, Gary, can you just mute your microphone if that's okay? Sorry, I can just hear you. Excellent. Can outstrip our biofutures numbers, our feedstock numbers. But the key difference, and this is incredibly important to that international audience listening, is the fact that this region offers a very complete solution. We have feedstock or biomass, we have sophisticated infrastructure and supply chains. There are multiple numbers of ports across our region who are well equipped, to be able to manage export potential. We have education and research facilities which underpin our existing agriculture and mining sectors. Importantly, we also have access to a highly skilled and technical workforce. So whilst biofutures may seem incompatible with mining and the supporting mining services sector, this experience means that when we put them together, we're actually well positioned to help transition from fossil fuels into a biofutures economy. Now, the final piece is government and private sector investment. We're exceptionally fortunate to be a part of some recent announcements by our Queensland state government around some future foods initiatives. And we've also got good and strong interest from international private proponents. So that space is also starting to heat up and gain some traction. So what have we got to do to make it all happen? I'm just going to skip through a couple of slides because I think the fact that Gary's come back on the screen, it means that he wants me to hurry up. What have we got to do? I think the things that are most important for our region is that we need to acknowledge the fact that we're transitioning a range of legacy sectors. This is not going to be easy, and to do this, we've got to successfully take our community, our producers, our farmers, our miners, the whole community on a journey so that they can become champions of the process. We've got to collaborate, communicate. We need to stand up some pilots, and we need to prove out, that success is a real option here for us. We're working hard to change the culture in our region. Now is the time to do and think differently. COVID has absolutely accelerated those opportunities, particularly in our region. What we thought was once impossible or too hard is now within reach. And what we need to do is work together, to achieve that future. I'll hand it back to you, Gary.
Thank you very much. I mean, I could have listened to you much longer, and I fully agree with what you said. So, but for the sake of time now, let's move on to Marisa, who is going to give us yet another sort of angle, and also coming from a different region of the planet yet again. So, Marisa, if you are online, and if some people are confused, I mean, it's Anne-Catherine, actually, Marisa sort of logged in as Anne-Catherine. So we have two Anne-Catherine, but actually one is Marisa. So Marisa, I'll leave it to you sort of for the sake of time. And I'll sort of zoom myself out again.
Okay, thank you very much, Gary, and good morning, good evening. Hello to all of you around the world. It's a pleasure to be here and just to share a little bit about Raízen's role in Brazil and how we are trying to support this green economy transition here in our country. So I'm process and quality manager at Raízen Cellulose Ethanol plant. And today I'm gonna count on Anne-Catherine's support to present my slides here. So once it come up, because I have no access. So just next slide, please. Just a quick overview about Raízen. We are a joint venture that was created back in 2011 by a strategic partnership between the Royal Dutch Shell and Cosan Group. The Royal Dutch brought into this partnership all the downstream business, the fuel distribution in Brazil. And the Cosan Group brought into this partnership all the mills and the sugarcane business since the plantation up to the production of ethanol and the sugar and the cogeneration facilities here in Brazil. So next slide, please.
I'm sorry, I don't have the rights yet, so I cannot.
Oh, I can. I
maybe
think
you
I
can
have
do it
it.
yourself. Yeah.
Let me see. Yes. Okay. So here, just skipping. So the resume of the JV, as I said, Cosan. So Raízen, here in Brazil, I just want to highlight some of our numbers. We are about 30,000 employees, but I want to emphasize this number here. So we have about 900,000 hectares of land cultivated with sugarcane culture here to supply about 50% of the sugarcane that we crush every season. So besides that, we are the fourth largest company in Brazil. So considering that, we know and we have committed ourselves as a company that will support this transition as a leader company in our country. So here just some of our numbers. So today we produce about 4 million tons of sugar, about 2.1 terawatt of electricity that it's being generated today with biomass from our operations. And we still have plenty of biomass for different other applications that I will comment here today. And besides that, we generate about 2.5 billion liters of ethanol. But we are able to trade, commercialize about 20 billion liters every year. So considering that amount of land that I just mentioned, so Raízen is quite concerned about the sustainability and the best usage of our soil. So considering our own land, we have most of our mills are certified by the Bonsucro, the certification that can guarantee that we have the best practices for the sugarcane plantations, and we are making the best usage of our soil. However, about 50% of our sugarcane comes from the other suppliers. So to guarantee the same standard of sustainability, the same usage of chemicals, the same usage of water, similar good practices, we have established our own program that it's been an example here in Brazil and quite successful to guarantee sustainability also within our suppliers. So by this program, we have been engaging almost 100% of the suppliers, and by having them engaged with us, we can have a win-win program where we gain because we have the sustainability in our core business, which is the plantation. And they gain because we can support them with financial resources for their operations. So considering the amount of land and the sugar cane that we crush every season, about 10% of the sugar cane processed in Brazil every year, we have a significant amount of biomass under our control. So about 30 million tons of biomass coming from the sugarcane business every year that can be applied not only for cogeneration business as we do today. So considering here just a quick overview about the Brazilian impact of renewables, our economy has grown last season about 1.1%, but the clean energy offer, the internal energy offer has grown 1.4%. And part of that, it's mainly because we are using more biomass compared to the previous years. So here you can see that the Brazilian energetic matrix is already significantly higher compared to the remaining world in terms of the renewables share. Almost done, Gary. And from those 46% of the green energy that we have in our matrix, the sugarcane biomass represents about 18%. And here, just to highlight where the sugarcane industry is located. So here we have the whole Brazil, and I want to emphasize where we have the Amazon forest, and the sugarcane industry. It's mainly located in the southwest of Brazil, almost 3,000 kilometers from the Amazon forest, besides the northwest of the country. Raízen business, it's concentrated mainly on São Paulo state, where we have the highest population in the country. So by having the industry concentrated, we also have the logistics of the biomass facilitated. So here, São Paulo state, where we have the 26 mills of Raízen spread around the country. And I would like to emphasize that in São Paulo state, we also have the one of the three main universities in the country that can support the technology development, like University of São Paulo, University of Campinas, and University of São Paulo State, and can support the development of new incubators, new technology hubs, and support this new industry for cellulosic ethanol conversion and other chemicals. So here within Raízen, we have four main applications for our biomass that today it's one of our main focus. So we have the energy cogeneration, so all our mills are self-sustainable in energy, and we have 13 of them that are able to export energy. Besides that, we have the pellets, the production of pellets with bagasse and lignin coming from the cellulosic ethanol business to focus mainly on Europe and Asian area. And besides, we have the biogas production from the vinasse, one of our sub-products. And finally, we have the second generation ethanol production with our industrial plant, as Gary mentioned, in Piracicaba. This is our 50th season, and we have exported so far more than 70 million liters of cellulosic ethanol produced in this plant in Piracicaba. And just to finalize, besides all these projects with biomass application, Raízen has also created a few years ago our hub of innovation in Piracicaba to incubate and to give support to new startups, mainly focused on the agribusiness, to support such kind of innovation and continue to lead the business. And yes, so that's it.
Thank you very much, Marisa. That was fantastic, sort of, and highly exciting. Now I need probably Ian's sort of guidance. In principle, we had sort of planned a little sort of panel discussion. I'm aware that we are over time, so if we are allowed.
Well, I would at least shortly raise one question that was raised within the chat, since we want to have the interaction with our audience, and that is a question to Aquaculture, which is from Christian Patermann. So what are the bioeconomy-related specificities for harbors facilities like the one that's drawing?
Yeah, thanks again for the question. Thanks to all the co-panelists. Yeah, basically we do have a lot of options in specificities. Oh my God, special industry and infrastructure conditions here. Mainly, of course, we do have waterway transport options, but we have been looking into different kinds of biomass, also the products that are coming into it, and we have to evaluate according to transport worthiness. Is there enough density to make it favorable and economically viable to transport certain kinds of biomass materials or products on the water side? and the results are not very homogeneous and not very super promising. We do, of course, have a lot of logistics options in terms of storage options, which gives us an advantage and an edge. And I feel that also in ports around the world, I've seen that in the Netherlands, also in Romania, for example, there's lots of old infrastructure that can be refurbished. So that is the main chance that I see for ports and harbors as future bioeconomy hubs.
Okay, thank you. And another question is possible that said by Ian. So I'm looking now at the three speakers here. Looking at the Slido, the functional multi-actor engagement came up as the most important challenge. Now, I think that the three of you probably would say that this is not a challenge in your cases, but what do you think?
I think maybe Kylie?
Yes, maybe Kylie.
Look, I think that from our perspective as a region, one of our biggest challenges that we have is actually the fact that we don't take our communities on a journey around biofutures. At research level, at education level, at agency and government level, we're all talking about the opportunity. We're not actually communicating that in a way that's believable or or relevant to our producers and our growers in our communities, and that's part of the problem. So, I think we've gone a few steps too far. We've actually forgotten, about the origins of our products, the origins of our biomass, and we need to go back and communicate more effectively with them and take them on the journey.
I think here in Brazil, we had similar situation, but fortunately, recently, our government has engaged in some new programs to support the biofuels and biorenewables. But we still face some lack of partnership. Let's say not lack of partnership, but lack of collaboration, I don't know, between universities and the industry to really make the technology transfer. So I think it's one of the big issues that we have in Brazil, the maturity between this relationship. And also it brings another problem, which is that we are forming really good people in our universities that somehow have difficulties to reach the private sector. So.
Yeah. I think I totally agree with both the answers and what Marisa and Kylie said. I feel that it's so good to have Marisa here, and that you also showed this last slide what you're doing, because I think that private activities and industry engagement and industry investment are super vital. I think it has to be a multi-actor effort. That's what we're seeing, but I think the push that comes from the industry side is very important. And if you're doing add-on stuff like an open innovation hub, that's also something that we are doing on a smaller scale. We do have a business plan, a startup competition here. We had the deadline yesterday. We have a lot of great ideas coming in, but I think these ideas need to be harnessed. They need space to come up, and I feel that in the regions when we have active participation there, this is where this can grow from a really bioeconomy picture speaking. So that is why I feel we highlighted that really in a really nice way today, this morning.
I think at this stage, and Catherine, I mean, this was a very nice sort of roundup of our discussion. And while I think we could go on for quite a long time, I find this a fascinating, interesting topic to discuss. And I think we stimulated a lot of the discussion, probably also follow-up sort of from here. For the sake of time, unfortunately, unless somebody wants to say something urgent, we may have to probably hand over to Ian now to move on with the program. So with that, I'd like to thank you all. That was a fantastic sort of presentation and discussion. Great, enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much to Gary and Volker for chairing that session, and thank you very much to the panelists also. We just scraped the surface of quite a number of very important issues. What I heard there was the importance of multi-actor collaboration from universities, government, and industry working much more closely together. And we certainly heard also the importance of bringing our communities along with us on the journey. So thank you very much to the panel session. And we're going to move on now from forests to industry and onto the oceans. And we'll now look at ocean bioeconomy, scaling up regional blue economy. And so for this session, I'm going to hand over to Ivana Lukic and Ukrit Satapuminad to lead us through the next agenda topic area. Over to you, Ivana.
Hello.
Okay, good morning and good afternoon. Depending on your time zone. I'm Ukrit Satapumin, the Director of Marine and Coastal Resort Conservation Division of the Department of Marine and Coastal Resort, Ministry of Natural Resources and Marine of Thailand. I would like to say welcome to the agenda topic 3 on ocean bioeconomy, scaling up regional blue bioeconomy. Actually, it's such an honor for me to jointly chair this session, and time is running. Okay, so next I would like to pass over to my co-chairs, Dr. Ivana Lukic, for introduction of the session. Please, Ivana.
Thank you very much for that very nice introduction. I hope my microphone works fine now and you can also see me. So my name is Ivana Lukic, and it is a great pleasure to be today here with everyone. Lots of people joining really from all sorts of places in the world. So I work for Asper Sustainable Projects. I'm a senior consultant for marine policy and planning. Asper is a consultancy that is initiating and then leading, managing projects that are transnational, international, and are dealing with topics of marine policy, circular economy in the marine context, as well as blue bioeconomy, including blue economies, and then including also blue bioeconomy. Today, our session will be structured in a way that we will have 4 presentations. First, we will have a bit on the global perspective, importance of seaweed when it comes to bioeconomy, ocean bioeconomy. Then we will zoom in to the Baltic Sea in Europe, and hear about the network approach, accelerator approach, and actual cases coming out from the Baltic Sea when it comes to the blue bioeconomy. Then we will hear about the concept of ocean multi-use, so how actually different sectors, bioeconomy sectors, but then also other sectors such as ocean tourism, or renewable energies that are more and more becoming high up on the political agendas. So how these different sectors can actually work together and derive synergies. And to conclude, we will also hear one example from Thailand on how actually bioeconomy and tourism can work together and ensure a more sustainable use of ocean resources and also protection. Okay, so with this, I would like to introduce our first speaker for today. That is Vincent Domazel, who is a director of food programming at Lloyd's Register, as well as the senior advisor on oceans at the UN Global Compact. So Vincent, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, everyone, for attending and for inviting me as well. Indeed, the blue bioeconomy is sort of an untapped potential today. When you think about it, 10,000 years ago, we moved from prehistory to modern human being, so-called at least. When we stopped being hunters-gatherers and we became farmers. But we never did that for the ocean. We are still hunters-gatherers in the ocean. Today, while we have 1 billion people starving, oceans cover 70% of the planet and contribute to less than 2% of our food. So there's a huge untapped potential here, and we have to move and manage the ocean. And we are not talking about managing it in a sustainable way, because we have already eradicated 50% of the biodiversity in the ocean. So we have to manage it in a restorative way. We have to stop fishing which is a purely extractive way. We have to stop doing aquaculture as we do in an extractive way. And we have to build some global permaculture in the ocean. It has been stated that seaweed and an ocean and a permaculture type of ocean, only 2% of the ocean could feed 12 billion people on this planet. So the potential is massive. In order to do that, so first of all, sorry, I did not introduce myself. I was a bit surprised by but I'm Vincent Dumezalier from Lloyd's Register Foundation, and Lloyd's Register is active since 1760 in the ocean, notably in shipping classification and food verification. And I know also work for the United Nations indeed to support their effort on the platform, on the ocean platform, so to improve the ocean. This year we have released what we call the Seaweed Manifesto, because when you look at the bioeconomy in the ocean, seaweed is what is the basis of it, and we have to support seaweed. Seaweed is not an existing resource as such. It is not used outside of Asia. The manifesto had an objective to bring together all the big stakeholders, FAO, large NGO, large IGO, large brands, and so forth, and create a consensus about what is the potential for seaweed, for instance, which is the basis of the ocean ecosystem, because if there's no seaweed, there's no shellfish, there's no small fish, there's no big fish. So what are the potential of seaweed? And seaweed is not only food. Seaweed can be a very, very healthy and sustainable source of food. It can be animal feed as well, with very, very positive side effect. It can be fertilizers. It can be biopackaging as well. It can be medicine. It can be source for cosmetic and so forth. And more importantly, it can also be a source of carbon sink. Seaweed can grow up to 30 centimeters a day, up to 60 meters long, so it can absorb a lot of carbon. Seaweed restore habitat in the ocean, is a source of, is boosting fish production. And seaweed also bring revenues to coastal communities, notably in emerging countries. Seaweed is an untapped resource. 99.5% of the cultivation takes place in Asia, so clearly we have not leveraged on that resource yet. There's a few initiatives in the Western world that are very isolated and disconnected. So the Seaweed Manifesto highlighted, first of all, the lack of safety standards, whether it be it environmental or food safety or occupational safety, as well as the level of disconnection. So the foundation just released a substantial funding in order to build the first ever global coalition for seaweed and fund project that will really enable new standards to bring seaweed to the market and to scale up the industry production for seaweed and to restore the ocean. So we will need to we need to implement altogether new standards, new safety standards. So the Safe Seaweed Coalition is this new coalition that we will just start next year. And we expect that to enable collaboration, because safety is a non-competitive topic that can enable collaboration. So we expect all these seaweed stakeholders starting to work together and collaborate and share experience through that coalition, so we can really scale up this production, use that as a basis for a new way to manage the ocean bioeconomy, and use it in a restorative way and in a regenerative way, rather than instead of an extractive way as we do it today. So that's the global perspective, and we deem we can feed the world in a very, we can be the first generation to feed the world in a very sustainable way, leveraging on this bioeconomy, and we will be the first one to do that ever. Thank you very much. I leave the floor to Estalia, I think.
Thank you for starting by providing a broad perspective on ocean bioeconomy. And so next, let's continue with the first case study from Baltic Sea region. Our speaker has been extensively working on blue bioeconomy development, particularly in the Baltic Sea region, and currently is the program manager of the Submariner Network for Blue Growth, EEIG. Please welcome Dr. Victoria Avantini. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the great honor of being here today. Good morning, good evening. I'm representing Submarine Network, and I will present to you our work in promoting sustainable and innovative uses of marine resources. I hope you are listening to me clear before I move on. Can you hear me?
All works
Yeah,
fine, yes.
yeah.
Great.
All good.
Okay, so I'm the program manager of the Submarine Network. We are a Baltic cluster in the north of Europe, comprising of 35 members from public and private organizations, namely universities, technology parks, government, also regions and municipalities, and SMEs, mainly manufacturing and consulting companies. We are participating in various networks across Europe and globally, and we are a non-profit flagship project of the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region. Of course, like you all, we are trying to solve global challenges. And for this, we are developing various projects, but just to bring you a little bit of what they are doing here in the Baltic Sea. We have a number of local challenges to deal with, and they have really fabricated what Submarine Network is doing for the last 6 years. So I had a quiz for you, but I think I will moving on because we don't have that much time left. So in the Baltic Sea, we have, because of running of waters in agricultural activities, we have high eutrophicated waters, which means that we have to really make an effort to improve the environmental status of the Baltic Sea. We have also algal blooms that are every year, and also we have overfishing, unfortunately, so we are making an effort of bringing aquaculture for fish production. But then with eutrophication, this is not very good companion. So what we are doing is also trying to bring aquaculture on land. So we have RAS aquaculture technologies in recycling waters. At the same time, we have a lot of knowledge in the Baltic Sea region. There are 8 countries around the Baltic Sea, including Scandinavian and Germany. And also we have trying to develop some projects for technology transfer within blue biotechnology, aquaculture, and so on. So leveraging this knowledge for improving the environment and the economy. So based on the roadmap we have developed back in 2015, we have analyzed what are the main challenges and also what marine resources we have in the Baltic Sea region. And we have identified all these marine resources that you see on the top line of my slide. So we're working with algae, with mussels, blue biotechnology, but also beach cast as nuisance and create value from it, and also marine litter, and also how to use marine space wisely. So we are taking, we are developing actions through project development with consortia in the Baltic, but European, but also global, to improve what, based on this, each of these marine sectors, what are the needs of these marine sectors, and we're developing projects. So this is how we work. So I'm presenting you this complex slide here. The idea behind it is that we have developed now is the 3rd generation of projects we're developing with other consortia. And but the most important is that we are curating our project results. So whatever the projects are bringing in as findings and recommendations, then we are taking this on board and we are developing the next generation of projects, identifying what project has been made, progress has been made, and what are the next steps to be taken. So for example, for one project we have the Baltic Blue Biotechnology Alliance. That was a project where we're developing a mentoring program and accelerator for blue biotechnology startups and SMEs. That was stemmed with a great success, and now in the next round we are operationalizing this mentoring program and accelerator international level and bringing it back to, as a service offer, permanent service offer under the Submarine Network. And from next year, they will be completely independent. So one slide I have for this, because we're running out of time. So we have so far mentored 39 cases all around the Baltic Sea, but also across, like for the Netherlands or Portugal. And the cases are working with blue biotechnology, as we started with algae production, but also production of food and cosmetics, but also producing technologies for production of algae, for instance. And also we have technologies that they are working with bioremediation, but algae, I have to say that algae was a very important, about 2/3 of the companies that reached us, they were working with algae, which means that it's very important for the Baltic Sea. So we have already 75 mentors, transnational, employed and working with us mentors for this accelerator. So that was for me. After that, we will have Ivana Lukic also presenting how do we manage marine space. Please stay with us. We have also workshops on Wednesday at TAG 3 of rebooting bioeconomy to learn more about bioeconomy and how we work. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Talia, very much for that. That was very, very inspiring. I will actually now continue with my own presentation. I did not mention that as per Sustainable Projects, so the consultancy that I work for in Berlin, Germany, is actually the secretariat of the Submariner network where Talia works. So there is lots of synergies between us, and my presentation now will continue on the synergies between different marine sectors. I will wait for my presentation to show up on the screen. Okay, all right. I think you should be able to see my screen now, entering the full screen mode. Okay, I hope it works. I will just continue. Okay, so the presentation is on the ocean multi-use concept. So what are actually the pre-requirements for the development of blue or marine bioeconomy? So in order to really tap into this potential and develop it in a sustainable way, we really need marine and coastal space. And as we all know, this space is limited. Then we also need a viable business plan, local acceptance or overcoming the so-called not in my backyard phenomenon. And then also we need to apply a sustainable approach to this development. However, marine bioeconomy uses or marine uses in general have been traditionally developed and managed following more sector-specific or siloed approach without really practical cooperation across sectors. So that was an issue traditionally. So now, what is the concept of multi-use? So multi-use is understood as an intentional joint use of resources, be it physical space, so marine space, joint platforms, joint logistics between different marine uses by two or more uses, actually. It is a radical change from the traditional concept of exclusive resource rights to inclusive sharing of resources by multiple users, so two or more marine users actually working together. So key benefits of such approach are really the reduced demand for ocean space, first of all, so that more space can be associated with potential future uses for future generations, or actually protected, so more space is left than free for that. And then also socioeconomic and environmental synergies can potentially also be derived for such more synergetic multi-use approach to using ocean resources. Now, when it comes to multi-use combinations with tourism, this is, for example, the so-called pescatourism, where tourism is combined together with fisheries, or let's say fishers taking on board tourists and showing them the world of fishing, more sustainable fishing practices, etc. So this can really help to prolong the tourism season, which is, for example, very relevant in the Baltic, where we have only two months of summer. Then it can also help to diversify and ensure less intensive fishing, and also provide alternative source of income to fishers whose activity is basically declining due to the lack of resources in the ocean. And also it provides less intensive fishing. Now, the other combination, for example, is combination between tourism and aquaculture, where again tourists are brought to the aquaculture farm to either taste the products, or hear about the sustainable aquaculture development, and so on. So this really can also help with better acceptance of such new developments, because aquaculture is not always well accepted especially in coastal areas. However, there are challenges associated with such types of activities, even though they sound very synergetic and good, but still there is unsupportive, or let's say a lack of regulation to actually regulate such uses because of lack of health and safety standards. So there are some examples worldwide, but these are not really widely shared. Thus, there is no really actual standards that can be applied in most of the countries, at least in the EU, where we have assessed this. And then there is a low capacity, especially when it comes to business development and marketing of such solutions. Now, renewable energies are so countries are committing to these very ambitious targets when it comes to renewable energies. So offshore wind, for example, is an important player in many countries. And the space is really needed in order to develop. So space offshore is needed in order to develop this potential, really tap into this potential. Now, it is a question if these offshore wind farms can also be opened up for other uses, such as fishing, some types of fishing, such as passive fishing, or aquaculture, be it mussels, seaweed, or fish aquaculture. So they really provide opportunities to move aquaculture further offshore. As we know, aquaculture is not always accepted in the coastal areas. So in order to really have it developed on a larger scale, this can happen in more offshore environments, and offshore wind farms can, according to certain designs, can also provide kind of a shielding effect of this harsh offshore environment, and also provide easier operations and maintenance, or rather combined operation and maintenance and sharing of these costs. So such combination can save space, reduce conflicts between different uses, and open space for fisheries within the wind farms, of course, certain types of fisheries. However, there are challenges such as the lack of knowledge about impacts, and thus unsupportive regulation, because there is not so much confidence yet in such multi-use systems. Then there might be high insurance fees associated to it due to the lack of health and safety standards, then lack of awareness, interest, and capacity from different users. So they're not really aware that this could be an opportunity and a business opportunity as well, really collaborating and working together. And there are also actual operational challenges, especially when it comes to the maintenance and operations within the renewable energy farms. Now, we are really building on a variety of research projects on the topic of multi-use that have been funded by the EU funds, research programs, but also some international funds, including the Belmont. However, the actual multi-use developments are still few, and mainly due to the lack of knowledge about the potential impacts on the economy and also on the marine environment. We're working to address this, both ASPRA sustainable projects as well as Submariner Network for Blue Growth, with a variety of partners across the EU. One example is the United project, and here on the map you see 5 different pilots. So 4 of these pilots is really focusing on the combinations, so multi-use combinations with bioeconomy, so be it renewable energies and bioeconomy or similar. So these are actually real pilots and real tests in the real environment. And these are to demonstrate the viability of multi-use systems. So for example, in the Netherlands, one of the pilots is the solar energy combined with seaweed cultivation, farming, and offshore wind farms, while in Belgium, that is offshore wind farms, seaweed restoration, cultivation, and then oyster also restoration and cultivation. Multiframe is another example of a project, and this project is very international, as you see from the map as well. So there are case studies in Norway, France, Sweden, United States, Mozambique, and Brazil. So in all these countries, the case study scenarios are being developed on ocean multi-use, and these also include bioeconomy. So all the case studies basically include the bioeconomy multi-use combinations. So the project is really aims to increase the capacity of public and private actors, such as, for example, ocean planners, marine strategy developers, for the implementation of the multi-use concept. And the project will develop concrete open source tools and provider assessment results and best practice examples on the topic of ocean multi-use. Now, some conclusions, especially from the Ocean Multi-Use Action Plan that was developed by MUSE's project, which stands for Multi-Use in European Seas. So some of the kind of main conclusions that could be relevant in the context of blue bioeconomy is that the concept of multi-use really requires a more proactive and synergetic management of ocean bioresources than the early involvement of tourism, aquaculture, and fishing in marine spatial planning and strategy processes and offshore renewables planning is really very important, and to start really these discussions and engagements early in order to reduce the conflicts, but also be able to identify synergies between these different sectors and identify possible also business opportunities and benefits to the local communities. Then a permanent discussion forum is needed, so not only one-time consultation as part of the strategy, for example, marine strategy development or marine plan development, so not only one-time consultation, but really establishing a permanent discussion forums to identify collaboration opportunities across different sectors. And there are some examples of this, such as, for example, the North Sea Community of Practice or multi-use community of practice, which is really an ongoing initiative led by the Dutch government. Then it is also important to address the high uncertainty about impacts. So for this, really an action is to identify test sites for multi-use and to really support test projects, pilot projects, which would then assess impacts of multi-use combinations and multi-use systems and build confidence of policymakers and planners. And as a final thing, really it is important to facilitate transfer of good practices and knowledge across countries, for example, via knowledge networks. And for this reason, Submariner Network, as well as the Multiframe project, are initiating the Ocean Multi-Use Knowledge Network, which is really a global initiative. We are gathering the project partners of various projects on the topic of ocean multi-use that we've been involved in, and we would really like to gather this knowledge in one single place and start communicating it on different levels, and really to support this change of knowledge and opportunities on the topic of multi-use between different actors and various countries globally. So more information about the Ocean Multi-Use Knowledge Network you can find on the Submariner Network webpage. I will also copy a link in chat. And you can also register your interest to join the network also via directly getting in touch with me. Very briefly, my last slide is save the date for the first Multi-Frame project webinar, which will take place on 4th of December at 2 p.m. Central European Time, and is titled How is Ocean Multi-Use Understood and Defined worldwide. So I very much invite you to register and attend this webinar. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much for your time and for listening to me. Now I will go on to present the next speaker for today. That is Nifon Phongsuvan, who is a specialist on marine and coastal resources and environment, and currently an advisor at the Department of Marine and Coastal Resources in Thailand. So Nifon, the floor is yours. I will stop sharing my screen.
So Thailand is one of the countries in Southeast Asia which has many tourism destinations with the most varied marine activities. Slide, please. Okay, and next slide, please. So, and the beauty of the coral reefs along the two coastlines on the southern Thailand is the main issue that attract a high number of tourists. Next slide, please. You will see in this graph showing that in the last decade, the number of tourists has increased rapidly to about 40 million each year. Next slide, please. An example, I'll show you the example at on the Andaman Sea coast at Phuket Island. That is the world famous marine tourism destination. In the recent year, about 10 million of foreign tourists visited each year. And of course, that is the situation before the COVID pandemic. Next slide, please. Next, please. Coral reef tourism brings a great revenues, but at the same time has a significant impact, especially when the place is overloaded by tourists. Next slide, please. And the damage occurs because of the unawareness behavior of the tourists or even the dive leaders, such as stepping on coral, collecting or touching wildlife, dropping an anchor onto coral, littering, as well as the biological impact like fish feeding. Not to mention all of these impact create an unsustainable use. Next slide, please. Then, how to mitigate such impact? Greenspin programs was initiated in 2004 under the framework of the coral reef activities of the UNEP East Agency Action Plan, with the aims to increase awareness of tourists and dive operators, alert them to responsible diving practice, and assist in coral reef status monitoring. Next. At present, there are 12 countries which adopt Greenfin's program, mostly in Southeast Asia, and a few in the Caribbean. Some countries, the program is implemented by the government agency or some by the NGO. For Thailand, the project has been adopted by the Department of Marine and Coastal Resources. Next slide, please. Greenfin is the voluntary program that any dive operator can join with free of charge. In recruitment of the member, we do the training for the diving and snorkeling tour operators to make them understand about the Greenfin Code of Conduct, the good practice for diving and snorkeling, the basic reef ecology, and the reef monitoring simple method that the rover divers call reef, that is called Reef Watch. And the next slide, please. The Code of Conduct encourages the tour operators and divers to avoid any threats to the reefs. So before every dive, the dive leaders have to brief their customer of what should do and shouldn't do, and be a role model. It also encourages dive operator to be aware of the waste management on board, help in the reef cleanup and also reef surveying. Next. Occasionally, we add teaching how to make the cleansing product, which is likely safe to the environment and cheap. Such cleansing agent is recommended to use on liveaboard rather than using a toxic agent. In this regard, it can say that a greenfin encourages to contribute to global target SDG 12. Next, please. Greenfin, especially in Thailand, we initiated the report monitoring, which can be done either by snorkeling or diving. So we have more eyes to keep watching to protect coral reef. Next. It is a good participation though. Until now, there are 683 report data submission around Thailand, and the Department of Marine Coastal Resources benefit these data for reef management, such as in the case of responding to the coral bleaching phenomenon. So it is apparently that this activity can serve the global target, the SDG 13. Next. The Greenfin has a standard protocol for assessing the practice of the members in accordance with the code of conduct. We assess either at the dive shop or on board to check how far the dive operator have abided by the code of conduct. Next. And at present in Thailand, there are 122 diving and snorkeling tour operators as the Greenfin's members. We provide certificates to the operators that offer tours according to the set of the environmentally friendly guidelines. So we strongly believe that a bit of help from the marine tourism operator will make a huge consequence. At least it can increase the resilience of the coral reef in the face of the climate change. In overall, the next, that is the last slide. In overall, the Greenfin's program helps contribute the SDG 14, that it is to conserve and sustainably use of marine resource. Greenfins is the program that complies well with the national long-term strategic plan of the country that determines to increase the fraction of the marine activities which are based on the environmentally friendly manner. In the next step, we are seeking to have the stronger partnership with the related organization, especially the Tourism Authority of Thailand and the Department of the National Park and the Ecotourism Organization, and to find a mechanism to integrate the standard of the Greenfins into the existing law and regulations in order to lead Thailand's tourism more sustainable. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Nipon, for sharing the case study highlighting how coral reef-based tourism industry can be sustainable through the Greenfin approach. And next, I would like to draw your attention to the panel discussion in which all posted questions will be reflected. The session will be facilitated by Dr. Vincent Dumezi. Please, Dr. Vincent.
How much time do we have?
I think we actually ran out of time for this discussion. For this reason, we haven't really reminded people to pose the questions because I doubt that we have really too much time. Yeah. I do see some questions in the chat, but maybe Vincent, you also have questions from your perspective for some of the speakers, given that you're really a moderator for this session. So in order to maybe speed up the process, maybe one or two questions we could pick, and then we basically proceed, and I could wrap up the session.
No, there are a few questions about the biopackaging effect. I don't know if anyone wants to pick up that one. The biopackaging potential and the potential for seaweed to replace or others, because there's crustaceans as well to replace plastics, notably. So do you want to talk about?
So when it comes to seaweed, really different uses, innovative uses of seaweed, specifically for biopackaging, for bioplastic. Tali, I think that's the question.
Yeah, I provided some links about this. So Notpla and Liloware are very active on that. So there are very interesting startups in the US, UK, and Asia who are using seaweed as a biodegradable and somehow edible packaging as well. So there's a great progress. So it was estimated that 0.03 forest would be sufficient to replace all PET bottle on the planet. So the available resource is really massive. A question about on the multi-use and the potential reluctancy from the renewable owners to open up to other activity. So how do you or what's your perception on how can we convince them to open it to multi-use?
Okay, thanks, Vincent, for that question. I think they are actually very open for discussions. That's kind of my experience, at least here in Europe. Or they want to be present if discussions are taking place together with governments and if that will trigger some possible policy or regulation changes. So they really want to be at the table and they're there. However, there are some concrete challenges that go beyond their simply willingness, such as, for example, the lack of standards, the lack of insurance practices still, because the concept is quite new. So we need to see more tests, I would say, more test pilots in order to really assess the impacts and be able to have standards. And be able then to build the confidence of planners and policymakers in order for them also to allow the regulation and allow other activities, some of the activities to happen within the wind farms. We do see that this is happening in some of the countries, although to a limited extent, and is closely monitored so that we could also learn from these first examples and be then able to advise other countries. So some examples are, for example, Denmark and UK, where passive fisheries are taking place within offshore wind farms. And then other countries, such as, for example, Germany, is now looking into allowing some types of passive fisheries within the 500-meter safety zone of their wind farms. So this is kind of being examined at the moment.
Another quick question, maybe on the possible lack of nutrients at the surface in this kind of offshore area where are done the renewables. So how can you how can you address this problem?
Lack of nutrients in offshore renewable area, where usually renewable, So there are some projects that are dealing specifically with the restoration of kind of combination between offshore renewables, such as offshore wind farms, and then restoration of, for example, oysters combined with the seaweed, so that kind of restores the environment to the how it was, let's say, before. But one of the examples is in Belgium, where the ancient oysters, the flat oysters, is now brought back because I think it's not there basically in the North Sea for the last 20 years or so. So now they're bringing it back and they're trying to cultivate it again together with offshore wind farms in a sustainable manner and closely monitor this development in order really to address that issue and have more biodiversity as it was before.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think, we'll give the floor to the next session.
Exactly. So thank you very much, Vincent, for that, and thanks very much for all our speakers today. We are really I would say late with this session, so I would just briefly wrap up. So very much thank you to all. Today I think we had a great pleasure to hear from Vincent on the global scale. So what is the importance, first of all, of seaweed? We have heard about this new Seaweed Manifesto. What is the role of it in the global bioeconomy, also in the context of food and food security? Then we have zoomed into the Baltic Sea, and we have heard about the importance of accelerators and especially Submariner network in putting all these projects together and facilitating more sustainable use and innovative use of local resources and bioeconomy. Then we have heard on the topic of multi-use, so how different sectors can really work together in order to create a more sustainable approach and more space-efficient approach to the development of the blue bioeconomy. And we have heard a very concrete example of from Thailand on Bluefin program, and really this sustainable tourism, and let's say combined with bioeconomy. So I think it was a very interesting session, and thanks very much to everyone. I will now give floor to Ian to also briefly wrap up the whole workshop. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to Ivana and the rest of the team. And Ukrit also, and to the rest of the panelists and speakers. That was a really interesting session, and I think it highlighted for me that while we know a lot about bioeconomy on land, I think that there is still a lot we need to learn about managing sustainable bioeconomy in the oceans, and that was a really interesting and thought-provoking session. So look, thank you very much. We are running a bit short of time, so rather than going around and maybe asking questions of our co-chairs and panelists, what I might like to do is to bring in Morikot, my co-chair, who is with us now. And Morikot, are you available?
Yeah, I think I really get a lot of information from this, and I think that from this one, if you talk about sustainable bioeconomy, I think we utilize bioresources, but we did not take care much of our resources, because if we should take responsibility on that. So if I take something like that, just Dr. Nipon talk about, the tourism industry, because this is a good example, because we earn something like developing country like Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand. We earn a lot of money from tourism industry, from reef tourism, but we still have a problem, And I think this one, you can use something like a greenfield approach that Dr. Ukrit and Dr. Nipon said. So usually we cannot do alone. So we have to help each other, to build, education and awareness. And this networking or participatory approach is very important. So I would like to encourage, to go for this, it must be form a networking or working together, and building awareness, is a must, for sustainable bioeconomy. And so this, probably this workshop, we have to think how we're going to encourage, collaboration and, participatory approach, working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Morikot. Anthony Imbrogno and Teresa Rossi, if you're still with us, can you join us, please, also? And I'll just ask you also the same question if you're available. So the question is, what have you learnt today in this session? And any final thoughts from you, from topic one?
I very much appreciated the case studies. I think it's great to look at what's being done in other regions to facilitate cooperation, and to see what new things are being tried. So I appreciated that from today's workshop. Thank you.
So the key learning from the talk that we heard, and I also talked to Gary to kind of that we have a common opinion here, is that it is of very high importance to really cooperate internationally and work with the opportunities of each single region that there is in the world, and then advance bioeconomy by looking at each other's successes, and only in this cooperation we can be successful.
Great, thanks Volker. And from topic three, Ivana and Ukrit, if you can join us again also. And any thoughts from you on the session today? Any final sort of thoughts that you'd like to leave with the workshop?
Okay, some very, very final thoughts from my side. I've also heard today a lot of times words collaboration, cooperation. So I think that's really the key, as well as sharing the knowledge, and that is exactly what we're doing here today as well. I was very happy today to hear more about the Seaweed Manifesto and learn really what is the role of seaweed when it comes to food security worldwide. Then it was very interesting, I think, to hear from the Submariner Network on really some concrete startups. So what is kind of the innovation potential when it comes to the blue bioeconomy? And I think it's also very important to not forget that the ocean is 70% of our planet. So I think that's where the potential stands, but it's also important to use it in a sustainable manner. So we need to really see how can we do that in a more synergetic way across different sectors, really collaborate together. And we have heard one very concrete example from Thailand on this, how different sectors, actually tourism, and then also bioeconomy can almost work in a synergy. So yeah, from my perspective, I think it was very, very interesting, lots of examples. So yeah, thanks very much all.
Okay, thank you. And look, I'd like to thank again my workshop co-chairs, all of the topic co-chairs, and all of the panelists and speakers today. It's been a really thought-provoking and interesting conversation. I would like to thank all of the participants. We've had over 120 participants in this workshop today. Thank you for the input that you've had into the Slido polls and into the mural, and also into the chat. And we've had a really fascinating conversation in the chat today. We will be doing some analysis on the input and the presentations today, and we hope to have some information and policy documentation coming out of the workshop today. So please look out for that. I know that many of you will participate in other workshops in the Global Bioeconomy Summit, and I know you'll also be joining the plenary sessions on Thursday and Friday this week, and they, I'm sure, will be very inspiring sessions for us. So thank you again for your interest in bioeconomy. Thank you for your interest in this workshop. It's been a pleasure having you with us. We appreciate your perseverance as we've worked through some of the technical challenges. But every day we're learning, and we'll get better at these. So thank you very much. We wish you all the best for a day ahead, or for those of you for whom it's a late night, probably time to head towards bed. So thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing more of you in the rest of the Global Bioeconomy Summit 2020. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Ian, can I have one announcement?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. We're going to have, right now we have ASEAN conference, ASEAN Bioeconomy Forums, in conjunction with GBS 2020. And it's a follow-up session on ecosystem and biodiversity utilization. This is going to be on Friday morning at 9 a.m. in Bangkok time. So we would like to invite the participant, the speaker, to join this conference. You can see from the GBS website. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marika, and thank you all for joining us.